Welcome back to class. This lecture is going to be a continuation of the last one that we held on Monday. So if you are a bit behind, no shame, but make sure you go watch that before you watch this one in order to make sure that you're not lost on what we're going to be talking about. Also, when it comes to the competition of the free $600 giveaway that I'm giving at the end of this semester for whoever's in top place, these are the two people in top place right now. Of course, it's early in the game. Anything could change. If you want to figure out how to compete, go watch lecture 2 and you'll get the necessary details. Also, quick announcement, my office hours have been completely booked out for this week. I'm going to reopen them on Sunday, and I'm also going to add some additional slots for you so that way you have a little bit more access to me. I'll post a story about it when those office hours reopen. Make sure you catch that quickly because again, this booked out faster than I expected, and this is going to be a first come, first served basis. Each office hour slot is going to be about 20 minutes with me. Make sure you're courteous to your other classmates. Don't be booking out a whole entire section, a whole entire hour, unless you really need it. But be courteous to other people as well. On the last lecture, we talked about each of these items on the screen that you see here before you, and I also gave you an analogy to go with it to help explain what's going on in a more broad type of way. I also dropped a video on YouTube that showed you a little bit more in details about what that analogy was referring to. I want to drop some of that content here just in case you miss it, and I want to dive into it just a little bit more. If you want to catch the full thing, make sure you go check out my YouTube channel, J Byte Bank. That link is in my profile, so you can click on it, go to the YouTube channel, hit subscribe, and then catch all of those supplementary, more technical videos that I can't drop here just because of how long they are. All right, with that being said, if we could just go ahead and rotate the phone to the left and we can get started. So I wanted to do a quick screen recording. If you are familiar with the topology that I gave out on that lecture for Monday, then a lot of this is going to make sense to you. What you're looking at is a topology that I built out on Cisco Packet Tracer. Now, inside of this topology, we have different things. We have different neighborhoods, like I had suggested. We have neighborhood A, we have neighborhood B, and we also have neighborhood C. And in that middle of that neighborhood is what we had, we called it our town home or our town hall, which was basically acting as the router in that neighborhood. So that way we can have a good example of everything, right? So I'm just gonna zoom out of it. And I labeled this as a WAN just to give you an information on what a WAN is, which is a wider area network. But personally, another word that you can use on this that you might see in networking terms is called a MAN, or a metropolitan area network. And what is the difference? We call this cyber city. So a MAN is that metropolitan is usually going to be cities. But when we're thinking about WANs, let's think about a little bit bigger. Let's make it, instead of connecting different neighborhoods inside of a city, let's say a WAN would be when two different cities are connecting, right? So now Atlanta is talking to Augusta. Augusta is talking to Richmond. Richmond is, like, you get the picture, right? So that's a little quick thing right there. I don't want to spend too much time on this because, again, I made a YouTube video, but I do want to show something that I didn't show in that video just to give you some quick awareness here. As one thing that I talked about is what happens when people communicate on a network, and I want to show a visual representation of that going on. So in order to do that, I'm going to click on this button right here, Add Simple PDU. I'm going to click on a machine that I want to talk. So we talked about Mr. James sending off a letter to Mrs. Paulette. Let's figure out what happens in real time when that happens. Now, the IP addresses, or the addresses of both of these machines, have been entered, and we're going to go ahead and step through this simulation. So first, we see Mr. James has a letter in his hand. So what is he going to do? He's going to forward it off to the grandma, or in our case, we called it a switch. That switch has an IP, a list of all the machines that it's connected to. So next it's going to send it off to the router because it doesn't know Miss Paulette in its neighborhood. That router, or that town hall, is going to send it to the switch address of Mrs. Paulette, and we see that that packet went to everybody, but these two people didn't need that packet. Miss Paulette did, so they ignored it. That packet Miss Paulette got, and now she's communicating back to Mr. James. And we see that being forwarded back through the switch that hits the router. It goes from the router to Mr. James's switch. We're back in neighborhood A, and then finally what happens is Mr. James gets that letter back. Now, that is the complete walk of what happens. But let's also look at what happens when a broadcast is sent. Remember last week we talked about multicast, unicast, broadcast. So what we just witnessed was a unicast, a unicast, which is direct conversation between two endpoints on a network. But let's look at a broadcast, right? So a broadcast, we're gonna do we're gonna add a complex PDU, and we're going to click on Mr. James again. Let's say Mr. James wants to send a broadcast, which is basically hitting everybody within his network or within his neighborhood. All right, everybody within his LAN. So the destination for a broadcast address is going to be 255, 255, 255. Ooh, I made a mistake. There you go, 255, 255. The source IP address is Mr. James's address, right? For this one, it's 192.168.1.5. If you want more on this, check out that video on YouTube. The sequence number we're going to put as 0. The one-time shot we're going to put as 0, or we're going to put sequence number as 1. One shot we're going to put at so then now we're going to create this PDU. And what happens with a broadcast is essentially everybody in that neighborhood, that LAN, is going to get that same message. So let's go ahead and hit play. We see that the letter goes to the switch, or the grandma in this case, who's going to look at it. Notice that this is a broadcast. Everybody should get that message. That includes the router and every machine on that network. So we see that those two machines are getting that message, and then ultimately that message comes back to Mr. James as well. So those are some examples for you. Like I said, I show you how to build out this full topology. And just to give you a little bit more insight, right, when we're clicking on certain things, Miss Claudette has an address in this neighborhood, and it looks like this. And the town hall has an address in this neighborhood, and it looks like that as well. All right, so that's a little bit about that. The next thing that I wanted to dive into, we're going to switch over, and I'll give you some more pictures, since I think pictures kind of help out. All right, so this is some more terms that I want you to be familiar with. The first one is going to be a load balancer, and I'm going to keep up the same analogy that I was using in class, but I'm also going to use that analogy to basically explain what each one of these technologies is doing, right? So a load balancer, just to give you a definition of it, is going to be a device or a piece of software that basically distributes network traffic across multiple servers within a particular cluster, something, so what have you. So to keep up with the analogy, let's say that in our packet tracer example that we had created over here, right? Let's say over here, Mr. James decided to create a business. And the way that you would typically go to that business is just by visiting his home, right? But what happens if a lot of people start going to Mr. James's businesses, right? And it starts taking up traffic within that particular street that he lives on, within that particular neighborhood. And then with all that traffic that's happening, a lot of people start complaining because, hey, they need to go to work, they got kids playing outside, etc. It's just too much for one particular home, one particular street. This is where a load balancer is going to come into play. In our analogy, things just got a little bit too big for Mr. James's street, but for the business that he's offering, let's say that he's selling cookies, right? Or maybe he's selling, yeah, let's just stick with selling cookies. So his cookie shop got too big for the neighborhood, but he wants to still be able to sell cookies, and he wants to still have a location where people can go and buy cookies. So in this analogy, what Mr. James is going to do is he's going to open up a second cookie shop, resource 1, a third cookie shop, resource 3, right? And then he has his original cookie shop as well. So with that being said, when people start going to Mr. James's cookie shop, and they look it up in Google and they find out, okay, where is that location at? Instead of getting one location, they're going to be given 3 locations. And each of those locations are going to be, let's say, within the same distance from them. So that way they could choose which one they want to go to. And also on that Google sheet, when they look that up, it also tells them, hey, this location is filled to the brim right now. So you're better off going to location 2 or location 3. Right? That is essentially what a load balancer is going to do. It's going to analyze traffic coming into the network from the internet, from people on the internet, and it's going to redirect people to the resources they are trying to get to, but it's going to make sure that there are multiple resources available first in the first place. And then if one resource is just getting way too much traffic, it's going to redirect that traffic somewhere else. I'm going to try to hurry this up because I don't have that much time on TikTok. Unfortunately, the platform only allows me to talk for so long. The next thing that every cybersecurity professional needs to be aware of is what is called a firewall. Now, a firewall is a network device or a piece of application as well that basically separates trusted traffic from non-trusted traffic, right? It looks at flow control. It analyzes networks to basically see or hold those networks traffic's holding on to a set of rules, standards. Does anything look suspicious? And a firewall can be on your network specifically. It could be internal to your network or external to your network. And you can also have a firewall on your host system as well. As a matter of fact, you probably have a firewall on your host system. If you go to your host system and you type in firewall, Windows Defender is going to come up. You click on that, and then you can look at advanced settings and then get a list of things that might be happening on your firewall. You can look at the outbound rules. You can look at the inbound rules. If you want to create a project, you can create your own you can create your own set of rules or policies and then import those, right? Import policies, import those, and then see how that works. And if it works well, you can export your policies and upload them to a GitHub repository or something like that. All right, so that is the end of this class. I'm going live on Friday, 7 a.m. Make sure you catch that for any questions that you may have. Make sure you tune in with me, and we'll go from there. Unfortunately, I can't cover everything within cybersecurity or within networking. Networking is a course on its own. It can go from beginner to advanced really fast, right? But I'm just giving you the basics, the introductory that I believe every cybersecurity professional should have an understanding of or be aware of, and it's your job to dive a little bit deeper. You can use resources that I've shown you. You can use Network Plus. You can go whatever way you want to go in order to dive a little bit deeper. Next week, we're going to be discussing security concepts and fundamentals. We're going to be diving a little bit deeper, things that you might see in the Security Plus and things of that nature. And with that being said, it's been nice today's lecture. Have fun. Go Panthers. Shout out Dr. Barlow, and let's keep on rocking him in top.